Hey there, I'm Louie, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how to make this antlered Meeble walker. So first off, let's go through the yarn. For the yarn, I'm using a I actually think this might be bulky yarn. I labeled it as worsted because I use worsted weight along with it, and I think it's right in between the two. I believe it's called buttercream yarn. And it's in a shade red, so we're just going to call it fuzzy red yarn. If you don't have this kind of yarn, you can use some kind of wool yarn, and you can actually brush it out with a cat brush, and it should get fuzzy, at least somewhat fuzzy like this. You'll also need worsted weight cotton yarn. I'm using orange, I guess it's kind of like a grapefruit orange, and off-white. And purple for the nose, but the nose I think could be any color you want, and we might make it without the nose as well. You'll also need some safety bead eyes, just like that right there. They're pretty small. I believe I'm using 8mm safety bead eyes, but you can use pretty much any size you want. In fact, big eyes could be pretty cute as well. You'll also need pipe cleaners for the antlers and possibly for the arms if you want to have adjustable arms. And some stuffing. And for our crochet hook, I am using a size G 4mm crochet hook. That's what I pretty much always use for my amigurumi. Alright, well, let's get hooking. We're going to start by making the nose here. And for the nose, we're going to be using this purple yarn. You want to make a slip knot. You don't really need it too long. I guess that's probably long enough here. Make a slip knot, and let's get these fuzzies out of the way. That's the thing with having a fuzzy character, is that you get fuzzies everywhere. We're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, starting in the second chain from the hook, we're going to skip our first chain here, and we're going to single crochet into the second chain right there. You can actually, it depends where you want those crochets, because you can do them in the back and they make a pretty seamless looking nose as well, but we're going to go in just the tops because they're a little bit easier. So we want to single crochet into that second chain from the hook, and we can single crochet into the next chain as well, so 2 single crochets. And then in our last chain right here, we're going to do, I guess it'd be like a double increase. We're going to do 3 single crochets into this last chain right here. It's almost like an increase plus 1. And you can kind of see that as we make this, it's twisting and turning around and upside down. See how it's upside down now? So basically, now we want to do something that someone taught me called a pivot. A pivot is when you just turn it around like that. So we want to do a pivot right there. And now we're going to be working into the back sides of the chains. So into this next chain right there where our second single crochet was, we want to single crochet 1 in that one. And then in our last chain right here, we want to single crochet 3 times. And that will kind of make it pivot back around. So 1, 2, and 3. And we kind of have pivoted around again. And you can see it's kind of working around that first stitch that we made, and that's okay. In fact, yeah, that's actually probably pretty good. Okay, so for round 2 for the nose, we want to just, I think it's just single crochet into each stitch all the way around, but you want to skip that first stitch that we worked around right there. So see how I skipped over that one, and here's our second single crochet that we made in round 1. We want to do single crochet starting in that one, and you just want to do a single crochet into every stitch all the way around. There should be 8 remaining stitches. Okay. Just keep going in a circle. This is also a really good way to make a an oval, to get an oval started. If you made that chain really long, you'd start to get an oval look. And I'm going to turn it inside out kind of a little bit. Oop, missed that one. There we go. Oh, there we go. Got it. Okay. Okay, and to finish up our nose, we're just going to slip stitch into the next stitch right here. Just slip stitch it, and we're going to cut the yarn. Oh, that's something I forgot to mention in the materials. You'll need some scissors and a darning needle as well. We're going to cut the yarn, leaving a pretty long end for sewing onto the face. Move that extra yarn out of the way, and just pull it all the way through like that. And we're going to go ahead and sew this onto the face once we have it made. Next up, let's make the arms. Okay, so for the arms, you're going to need both your fuzzy red yarn and your orange yarn. So we're going to start with our orange yarn though. So let's get that orange yarn here. Let's move this guy out of the way. Get that light. All right, so there's my hair. That's pretty nice. We're going to make a magic loop. You can also use the chain 2 method if you'd like. We're starting in our orange yarn here. Okay, and working into the magic loop or into the second chain from the hook, we want to single crochet 6 times. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and that'll be the end of round 1. We can go ahead and tighten it all up now. If you're doing the chain 2 method, obviously, you won't really have that problem. We're going to tighten that part. Okay. And starting into the first single crochet right there, this pattern is worked in the round, meaning that we don't have to turn for the entire pattern. We can just keep going around in a circle. So starting in that first stitch right there, we want to make a bobble stitch. And a bobble stitch is when you are going to yarn over with your yarn, go into the stitch, pull a loop through, and then yarn over, pull through 2 stitches, and then repeat that 4 times total. So let's do it again, 3 more times. So yarn over, into the stitch. I'm going to be working around this tail just to hide it in. Pull that loop through, yarn over, pull through 2. Okay, 2 more times. Yarn over, into the stitch, pull through, pull through, yarn over, and pull through 2. And you can do just 3 if you want for the hands and the feet. It might make it a little easier if this is the first time you're doing a bobble stitch. But normally for a bobble stitch, we're going to do 1 more. Yarn over, into the stitch, pull through 2. And then to finish up a bobble stitch, you're just going to yarn over and pull through all the loops on the hook, like that. That's going to be how we're going to make a bobble stitch. Okay, next we're going to single crochet into the same stitch that you just made that bobble stitch with. Okay, so that's kind of hard to do. Just kind of like aim towards just where the center of that bobble is right there. Pull a stitch through. And it's going to look a little open like that, so just try to tighten it up a little bit. Okay. In the next 2 stitches, you want to repeat that by doing a bobble stitch and then a single crochet into the same stitch. So let's do it again. And you're going to do 1 of these bobbles in all 3 of these stitches. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, so for the second one, we're going to do another bobble stitch. Pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. You want 4 of those total, so that's 3. 1 more. And I'll go a little slower next time. I realize I'm going pretty quick. And then you want to finish up by yarning over and pulling through all the stitches on the hook right there. Okay, and then another single crochet into that same stitch. Pull a little tight. That'll be our second repeat. Now 1 more time. Yarn over, go into the next stitch, pull a loop through, yarn over, pull through 2. And let's do it again. Yarn over, go into the stitch, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. You want 4 of these total. Pull through 2, yarn over, into the stitch, pull through, yarn over, and just pull through 2. Okay, and then finish up by yarning over and pulling through all the stitches on the hook right there. Okay, now we'll do a single crochet into that same stitch, And the feet are actually done with that same exact thing, so we get 3 of these bobble stitches in a row. But the hands are a little different. So in the next stitch, you want to do an increase, meaning 2 single crochets. So we go 1 and 2. Now if you're making the feet, you do another increase and then another increase, so 3 increases in a row. But for the hands, you want to do 1 more of those bobbles right there in the next stitch. So we do 1 increase and then a bobble and a single crochet into the same stitch. So let's do that bobble. The bobbles are probably the most annoying part of this pattern. That or working with fuzzy yarn can be a little tough if it's the first time you've ever done it. Okay, we'll do a single crochet in the same stitch. Okay, and in this last stitch right here, you want to do an increase. But we want to get our fuzzy yarn first. So let's grab that fuzzy yarn. So we'll do an increase. I'm going to do my first single crochet in that stitch. Now I'm going to do another single crochet in that stitch, but I'm not going to finish pulling it through. We're going to grab our new fuzzy red color, and we're going to change to that. Pull that through. Okay. So for round 2 of the hands, this is the same with the feet, I believe, too, but I'll show you that in a bit. We're just going to do a single crochet into each stitch all the way around. Okay. Grab that tail end just to hide it in for just a second. Oops. When you get to these bobbles, it can be kind of hard to know where the stitch is. I'll show you when it comes to this next bobble. I'm going to cut this orange yarn. We'll come back to that for our next part, which will be, I think, the foot. Okay. Okay, so here's another bobble. It's kind of hard to tell where the stitch is. If you turn it up to the top, though, you can see where it is. A little easier. Oopsies. There we go. Okay, so the fuzzy yarn can get a little tough to work with after our first stitch because it's so fuzzy and it's hard to see where the stitches are. So you got to take it a little slow as you're going into this next round. Okay, so for round 2, you want to do 7 single crochets into the next 7 stitches. The best way to find out where your single crochets are look for the V's and just put your hook right above that. So there's our next one. I just go and put it right above that, and it goes right where it needs to with this fuzzy yarn. Just make sure to keep count. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Last one is right here. 7. Oh, there we go. Okay, and then we're going to invisible decrease 2. So an invisible decrease, if you don't know this, let's look at the top of our stitches. It might be kind of hard to see with fuzzy yarn, but you're going to take the crochet hook and you're going to stick it into the tops. There's one top of the next 2 stitches. So 1 and 2. And then you want to yarn over and pull through those 2 stitches and then pull it kind of tighter because that thing became really loose. And then you'll just finish up that stitch. And that's going to be an invisible decrease. It decreases it down just subtly. So let's do one again. You're going to go into the front loop of the next 2 stitches. 1, 2, okay? Yarn over, pull through those 2 loops, and then yarn over and pull through 2. So that's 2 invisible decreases, and then finish up with just 1 single crochet. That's going to be the end of round, what was that, 3? Yeah, round 3. Okay, so for round, or I'm sorry, that was round 3, 4, that was round 4. For round 5, now we're on round 5, there we go. We're going to single crochet 7 stitches. Again, same kind of thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and here's our last 7. And then we're going to do an increase, but working only into the front loops. So we're going to go into these front loops right here. We're going to do an increase. This is going to kind of create the illusion of a bicep. That's kind of what I go for. I said bicep weird, but you know what I mean. We're just going to do it in the front loops though, so that it really comes out towards us. Okay, you want to do an increase into the next 2 stitches, but working only in those front loops. So there's our next one. This is going to bring you back up to 12 stitches around. Okay, there's our 2 rounds of increases. I know it's hard to see because it's super duper fuzzy, but I did it. And now into this last stitch, we want to work a single crochet into both loops. Okay, that's those increases are the only stitches where you do those weird front loop increases, I guess is what you'd call them. Okay, so for round 6, we're going to do a single crochet in the first, right here. And then 2 invisible decreases. So we're going to go into those front loops. Yarn over, pull through. Yarn over, pull through 2. We're going to do that twice. Okay. And then we're going to do a single crochet into the next 7 stitches, which are the last 7 stitches for this round at least. Oops, you gotta be careful with fuzzy yarn that you don't only grab half of it. So it's kind of tricky about this stuff because it's got fuzzy yarn in it, but it's also got like a small thread of similar colored yarn. Okay, so sometimes I just grab that thread by accident. Okay, that's going to be the end of round 6. For round 7, you're just going to single crochet 1 right here, 1, and then invisible decrease 2. Okay, there's 1 invisible decrease, and there's 2. Okay, and then do 1 more single crochet into both loops, and you're going to finish up by doing a slip stitch into that last stitch right there, and you want to cut leaving long enough to sew onto the hand, or the body rather, and just pull it all the way through. Okay. And next up, so you want to make 2 of these because you want 1 on each hand. Look at that, I got a weird little tiny hand now. So you want to make 2 of these hands. You're also going to want to make 2 feet. Now the feet are basically the same as the hand, at least for the first 1, 2, 3 rounds, except for you don't want that 4th bobble stitch. So you'll do the 3 rounds of bobble stitches and then just 3 increases. So increase, increase instead of this bobble and single crochet, and then another increase, and then you'll do a round of single crochets using all that fuzzy yarn, and then after that I'll pop in and help you out after that part, but I'm gonna get that made real quick and I'll be back in just a sec. Wait, bye. Okay, so I have finished up round 3 of the feet, and you can see what it looks like without that little bobble stitch on the back there. Okay, so now for round 4, we're going to do 7 single crochets, and then we're going to work an invisible decrease in the next 2 stitches. But let's get those 7 single crochets first done, Lewis. Let's stop jumping ahead of ourselves. Okay, yeah, fine, that's fine. I don't talk to myself, you talk to myself. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And oopsies, I did that thing again. With fuzzy yarn. There we go. 6 and 7. Hope no one ever gets freaked out by these videos. Okay. Now for the next 2 stitches, we're going to do invisible decreases. So we want to do those front loop stitches. So 1, boom, and 2. That's a double boom. And then a single crochet in the last stitch right here. Okay. So for our last round, for our feet here, you want to do a single crochet in the first, and then 2 invisible decreases. Right there. 1. And 2. And then a single crochet into the next 5 stitches. 1. Oopsies. Once you get going with the fuzzy yarn, it's not too bad. I like to do the feet and the hands before I do the body, but honestly, you could do the body. You could get going on the body because it's fuzzy, but you know, you can get kind of like acquainted with the fuzzy yarn. Okay, so that's going to be our 5 single crochets, and that should take you to the end of the round. Okay, and to finish up these little feetsies here, you're just going to do a slip stitch into the first stitch right here. Pull it through. We're going to cut long enough end for sewing onto the head, or I guess it's the head and the body, and then you just pull all the way through. And that's going to be how you make the feet. And you want to make 2 of these feet. I went ahead and did them off camera. So we got hands, we got our feet, and our nose. Our last thing that we're going to need, if this all gets untangled, is, before we make the body at least, the antler, which you can tell is not shaped like this yet because it's made with 2 parts that are just kind of like little funnels there. And I'll teach you how to do that now. We're going to need our off-white yarn for this. Okay, so for our antlers, they're actually made of just these 2 simple parts, and the first part, this little part here, is actually just the start of our long part. So I'm going to teach you how to make the long one, and I'll tell you where to stop for this little part, just to save on time on the recording because these end up taking forever. Okay, so let's go ahead and make the long end here for this antler, and then we'll sew it all together, and yeah, you can have a little defense, or I don't know what he uses it for. All right, so we want to be doing either the magic loop method or the chain 2 method. I like using the magic loop method for this because it's easier to do with the cotton here. And we want to single crochet 6 into the second chain from the hook, same way that we've been making the feet and the arms and the, well, not the nose I suppose, but nose I suppose. 4, 5, and 6. And we'll close this up a little bit. Okay. All right. And starting in that first single crochet, again, we're working in the round. For round 2, we just want to single crochet into each stitch all the way around. So these antlers are actually pretty easy, right? Because it's just, really it's just single crochets all the way out, regardless of which one of the antler parts you're making. It just depends on which size part you're making to where you're going to stop. So if you're making these little parts here, all you'd be doing is single crocheting into the next stitch right here, and then you'll do a slip stitch in the next. This would be the slip stitch, and then we would cut it and just pull it through, and that would make the little end. But I'm going to keep going and make the large end. For the large end, all you're going to do is you're going to single crochet into each stitch all the way around, and you're going to do that for 10 rounds total, including the round you just finished. So we just finished a round of single crochets. This is our second round of just single crochets, and you want 10 rounds of these. So this is pretty, self-explanatory. You just kind of keep going around 10 times in a row. Just keep going in a circle. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'll get those single crochets made, and I'll be back in just a second. Okay, so I finished our 10 rounds of just single crochets, and to finish this up, you're just going to do a slip stitch into the next stitch here. Ooh, there we go. Pull it through, and then you can cut it. You want a little bit of an end just to sew onto the head, and then you can just pull it all the way through. All right, now let me show you how to sew together the short end onto the long end. This is going to go right like that. So all you got to do is grab our darning needle. Here's our darning needle right here. And you want to thread, oopsies, that's the wrong one. This one. There's going to be two ends here. This one's coming from the middle and this one's coming from the end. You want to thread the middle one. Okay. And then you want to put it wherever you think the middle of your antler is going to be. So mine's going to be like right there. Yeah. So you want to put it right in the middle of that, right into that stitch, and then out on the opposite side, and pull it all the way through, and then thread the other end, and then we're just going to simply sew it together by going and sewing around the stitches like that. And this is just simple sewing together. I actually have a full video teaching how to sew together if you need some extra help. Just go to my YouTube channel there and search sewing together. Okay. Just making sure we're doing the right thing here. This is going to be the last one right here. This is going to be a really quick, easy way to sew it together so that you don't need to do it like while we're going together. So like that's why we did this knot through the end. That doesn't make any sense. It will make sense in a second. We're going to go through this last stitch here and come out through the back, through the same hole you came through with the first one, and you're just going to double knot it. One, ooh, and two, and then cut it pretty close, and then you can take your needle, the back end of it, and I can just stuff it back in to the piece like that. All right, that's going to be how you sew the antlers together. Now we want our antlers, here let me show you the finished one. We want our antlers to be angled like that. So what we do is we take a pipe cleaner and you want to cut it in half. I suggest not using your scissors that you use for yarn for this because they can ruin scissors. What I do is I fold it in half, a full pipe cleaner, fold it in half, and then I cut the other end. Okay. And then fold that in half. And then twist it together. And this way you can make it any shape you want if you're not sure what shape you want it to really be. You twist it together and we're going to put it into our antler. You want to do this for both ends. And you want the ends, that was just really lucky, but you want the ends to be coming out and parting in the half like that, like forking right at the end of our antlers. And then now we can just bend it into shape. There you go. And we're going to put this, when we sew the head together, we're going to put these two ends in the head and then twist them together to really lock it in place. And now that we have all the parts that we need for our head, let's let's get crocheting on the full body. Move these scissors and everything out of the way. And we're going to start with our fuzzy red yarn. Okay, so you want to start with this fuzzy red yarn, and you can do the chain 2 method, or like I have been doing, the magic loop method. I'm going to go ahead and start with the magic loop. And the beginning is, I think you kind of have guessed what the beginning is. We're just going to be single crocheting 6 into the second chain from the hook or into the magic loop. Because we're working with this fuzzy yarn, it is going to be difficult to see where the beginnings and ends of the yarn is. So you might want a little bit of yarn so you can check where the end is. No matter how good of a crocheter you are, this fuzzy yarn is really difficult to keep track of. So that's my heads up, because it is. And you can't really go back. You kind of got a one and done situation here. We want to just tighten it a little bit more. There we go. There we go. Okay. So let's grab a little extra yarn for making sure we're at the right ends. And the best way to find out where the beginning is, especially with this fuzzy yarn, is counting from the end. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's going to be right here. Weasel our crochet hook into that. And for round 2, we're just going to be doing an increase into each stitch all the way around. And I want to work around, I actually want this in between those two so I know where the end is. Like that. Okay, and I want to work around this red tail end. But we're actually going to end up using that red tail end eventually. So you want to do an increase into each stitch. This is going to bring you up from 6 stitches to 12 stitches. Okay. So there's our first 2 increases. I'm going to pull this out. I'm going to go right into the center and pull out this this end, which we're going to use for like this top of his hair eventually. Okay. And we just want to do an increase into each stitch. This is 5 and a 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and here's our last one, 11, and 12. Okay, pull that end, what's it called, stitch marker out. We can actually cut this end pretty short. We only need the top hair to be about that long, maybe. We're going to add a few more to that later also too. Wow, that was a lot of similes. Okay, so you're going to put the stitch marker over to the end, and we're going to work on round 3 now. For round 3, we work a single crochet into the first stitch, and then an increase into the next. Okay, and you want to repeat that 6 times total. This is going to bring you up from 12 stitches to 18 stitches. And this is a classic amigurumi move right here. This is what I do pretty much for all my amigurumi, is I at least get up to 18 stitches around. But this guy is going to get up a little bit more. We're going to get all the way up to 24 stitches, so we're going to have another round of increasing after this. Okay. Now you can see our little end piece. We'll pull it back across. Okay, so for round 4, we're going to single crochet 2, 1, under 2, and then increase into the next. And we're going to repeat that 6 times total. So 1, 2, and then an increase. Okay? And you want to repeat that 6 times total, going all the way around. Oop, let me get that end. There we go. Okay. Make sure to keep counting your stitches. You can kind of see where the stitches are now. 2, 3, 4. Gets a little bit easier to read this fuzzy yarn after a few rounds. Once it gets a little bit bigger, it's kind of easier to tell what you're doing, which is, I guess, the case with all yarn, but definitely with this fuzzy yarn. Okay, and I'm crocheting a little tighter than I normally would like, so I'm going to try to like loosen it up right around here, but you don't want to loosen it too much. Okay, so that's going to be the end of round 4. Now for round 5 through 9, that's 5 rounds total, we're going to be single crocheting into each stitch all the way around. So I'm going to pull that that new strand out of the way, and all it is just a quick and easy, or just single crocheting in every stitch. It's very easy. So I'm going to go ahead and do these 5 rounds, and I'll be back in just a second. Do I talk too much like a weatherman? Sometimes I feel like I talk like a weatherman. Anyhow, I'll be back in just a second. 5 rounds of just single crochets. Okay, so I finished our 5 rounds of single crochets, but I actually stopped 1 stitch early because now we're going to need our orange yarn again. So I wanted to get that going. So we will do our last single crochet right here, grab our orange yarn. We're going to actually change to that orange yarn now. And if you look in the pattern, if you're following the written patterns, and you see at the end of the round, you'll see what the color changes are. And I do that because usually the round is very similar of what you're doing, and the color changes are very specific. So that's kind of how to follow along with my pattern here. So for our next round, we want to do our first 8 stitches in orange. You can see by the end of that the piece it says 8 in orange, and we also want to make all 8 of those stitches into the back loops, meaning the loops furthest away from us right here. So we're going to go ahead and single crochet 8, and you can work around this tail to hide it, or you can just leave it there. We're actually just going to leave it because I don't think it's going to come apart. So we're going to do 8 in orange and working only in those back loops. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and our 8th is going to be right there, but we're going to want to change back to this fuzzy red yarn. So I'm cutting it, and then I go back, finish our 8th single crochet there, put our fuzzy yarn in between, and just change back over to fuzzy. And for the rest of this round, we're just going to be working single crochets. I'm going to work around that orange just for the first one, but just regular old single crochets in fuzzy red for the rest of this round. And I can actually take out this stitch marker now, because you know where the end of the round is, because it's where the orange stitches start. So it's the best way to find out where the end of your round is from now on. So we're just going to keep going around. Okay, so we're at the end of our round, and we'll just do a last single crochet in this fuzzy red. So for round 11, we're going to single crochet into each stitch all the way around, but of course we got those color changes. This time we want 1 in our red fuzzy yarn, so we're going to get halfway through there, and then we want 7 in our skin tone orange yarn here. Boom. And we want 7 in this, oopsies, be careful because you don't want that fuzzy yarn to poke through too much on that new color. So I'm actually going to go back for just a second, get that last single crochet in there. Okay, now let's try this color change again. Get our orange yarn, place it in between, flip it under, don't grab any fuzzy with it, try to avoid that, get it through. Okay, now we want 7 in this orange yarn, and we're working in both loops now. We're not working in just the back loops. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and here's our 7th right there. We're going to take this, cut the yarn, boop, place it in between, and change back to our weird maroony red. Crochet around that orange for just 1 stitch right there, cut it, come back to it in the next round. So now for the rest of this round, we're going to do just 16 in this fuzzy red. We just got to finish it up, go all the way around in this fuzzy red yarn, and yeah. Well, let's move that out of the way too. Okay, so I have finished up our last round there. For our next round, we want to do 2 in this fuzzy red yarn, 1 and 2, and we're going to change colors now. So grab our orange yarn, and actually for the next 6 stitches, we want the top of the stitch to be fuzzy red and the bottom of the stitch to be this orange color. So how we do that is we pull through with our fuzzy red, and then we flip it so the orange is over the fuzzy red, go into the next stitch and pull the red or the orange through, and then switch back to our fuzzy orange and pull that through. And you want to do 6 of those. So there's 1, and there's 2, and there's 3, so we just go orange and then red and then orange and then red and then here's our last one, orange, and then we just pull through with our red, and we'll single crochet around the orange stitch here, cut that loose, and that's actually going to be the end of our orange yarn, which is kind of nice. So we'll just pull it out and put it to the side. And for the rest of this round, you're just going to want to do 16 of these fuzzy red yarn stitches. That sounds about right. Fuzzy red yarn stitches, just 16 of them. Okay. And for our next round, I'm going to say this a little early, I suppose, so maybe I'll slow down. You know, I have a problem with you going too quick, you know. Here we go. Okay, so for our next round, it's just going to be single crochets all the way around in this fuzzy red yarn. I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll come back, and then we will move on to sewing certain pieces on. Actually, no, we'll start to do our decreases, and then we'll sew stuff on. So first, do just a round of single crochets. I'll be back in just a second. Okay, so I have finished up our round of single crochets, and that'll be the end of that round. For our next round, round 14, is going to be the first of our decreasing rounds. We have 3 rounds of decreases. So what we need to do is single crochet in the first 2 stitches, 1 and 2, and then do an invisible decrease in the next. For an invisible decrease, we go into the front loops. Oh, I already told you this. And just do that. Okay, there we go. I forgot I already said that. So we want to repeat that 6 times total. So let's do it again. Just single crochet 2, 1, on the 2, and then go into the front loops. There you go. Okay, and that's that. That's how it goes. We're going to repeat that 6 times total, and that's going to bring you down from 24 stitches to 18 stitches. Which is going to be what we need to be at for sewing everything together. You want to just decrease 1 round before adding our hands. Our feet are actually going to be sewn on after we've already finished it up and sewn it together. It's going to be our last invisible decrease here. And I'm going to pull this loop pretty far out, because now, and now we're going to add, to sew some parts together. So I'm going to start with our antlers. So where's my, there we go. So we're going to take our antlers, and the best way to do this is 1 by 1. is you'll just flatten up your piece, flatten it so that your face is in the front, and the antlers are going to go perfectly on the side. So what you're going to do is, it depends on where you want it, how high you want it up. I personally end up making them go pretty high up, close to the top of the head, but you can do them all the way down on the side if you want to. So I'm going to go kind of high up, like right there. I think that's going to be around 4 or maybe 5. And I'm just going to place the two ends of these pipe cleaners into a stitch apart from each other. See, so there's one stitch there, and then we're going to do one stitch just above that. And because it's fuzzy yarn, it's hard to get in there. And then go from the inside, we'll grab the ends, make sure it's not shredding up the yarn too much. Turn it a little bit inside out, but not all the way. There we go. So you can see it kind of poking through there. Just need these two ends coming through. Ah, see, the hard part is this yarn is so fuzzy that what it really likes to do is hook on to whatever it can. There we go. Okay, now on the inside, once you have those poking through, you want to twist the ends together like that. And you can open it up a little bit, and that should hold the horn in place for you to sew it on. Now I'm going to take this end, so this is the end from the inside. I'm going to take this, thread it on our needle, and I'm just going to go straight through the middle. And I'm just going to use that at the end for tying, for knotting this together. So we're going to take the end of this, thread it on the needle, and we're just going to simply sew it onto the head. Just make sure that the point is pointing up right there. Okay. And this is just going to be done exactly like how you sewed it onto, sewed that short end onto the long end when you were actually sewing this antler together. These antlers were really fun to make. I'm definitely going to include them eventually on my other amigurumi pieces because they're crazy. Like, they look so cartoony. I love them. They look so like Muppety, and I'm a huge Muppet fan, as you can probably tell from this pattern. Actually, this pattern is very Muppety. Kind of looks like Gonzo a little bit in a weird way. Okay, or maybe like Fozzie Bear, like an alien version of Fozzie Bear, but with antlers. Okay, that's going to be our last one. Go into that end. Okay, and I'm just going to show you this next part. Well, actually, okay, so double knot these two together on the inside. Okay. And then we're just going to cut those kind of close, throw it to our side. Oopsies, lost our needle, but I'll grab that in just a second. Now I'm just going to show you this next part now, even though I usually do this later when I have some extra thread from the arms. So you want to use a little bit of this maroon red fuzzy yarn, and usually you can just use the leftover from when you sew on the arms or the legs, but I don't really have those right now, so I'm going to grab an extra thread of that red yarn really quick. And what we basically want to do is we want to add some extra yarn around the antler here, so that it kind of works it seamlessly in. See how it looks like it's part of the body when you do that? And here it's kind of like very obviously just boink, stuck on there. So what we do is we grab an extra thread of our red yarn. It's probably more than enough. I'm going to thread it on a needle. And we're going to come out through probably the bottom or the back of where you sewed the antler together. Okay. And like I said, this is way more than I needed. But I will go around the border of the antler a few times, like maybe like four times look pretty good. Just 4 times like that, and then go back into the body, into a different stitch than you went into, or came out of rather. Okay, like that. And then we're just going to double knot these two together. And it's so much extra yarn that I don't need, so I'm going to cut this end off just to make it easier to even or tie together. Okay. Just double knot it. And there you go. And that's just going to make it look like it's part of the body, because it is part of the body. We're just going to stuff those 2 extra ends in there. And I'm going to go ahead and sew on our other antler on the opposite side. And I'll be back in just a sec. Okay, so I have sewn on our little antlers there. Next up, we'll be adding our 2 eyes. And our eyes are pretty easy. Here you can see them on our finished project. They're going to be in the second orange stitch to the right and left of our where we color change. Whew, that was way more difficult to say than I thought it would be. But here, let me grab the our little eyes real quick. So you're going to be using these cool safety bead eyes, but if you don't have them, you can actually get away with using just some bullion knots instead. But our exact location for these eyes is, we're going to go into the second round of orange stitches and 1 stitch from the right. And you're actually going to go into the very center of that stitch. So not into right here or into right here, but right into that center of that stitch. And we're going to actually just twist it. And it's going to poke through like that. We're going to take our end and just lock it down. Just lock it down. Sound like a sports announcer. And we're going to do the same thing on the opposite end. So we're going to go in 1 stitch over into that very center. Just wiggle it until it pokes on through. There it is. Might need your nails to get all the yarn over it. Grab that end and poke it on to lock it in. Okay, so now we got our eyes, but you can kind of tell that this eye looks a little bit different than these eyes. That comes with a little strand of yarn. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab just a little bit of our orange yarn. Okay. And we're going to take our needle, thread it on the needle, and we're going to come out through the stitch. Let's do it on this eye actually. We're going to come out through the stitch just to the right or left of the eye. And we're going to go into the stitch across from it, then out through the same stitch. We're going to do that a few times, like maybe 2, maybe 3, enough so that it begins to cover the eye a little bit. Just a little bit. We just want the bottom of the eye to be covered. See? Starting to get over. That actually 3 looks like it's going to probably do it. So when you get it covered up, you want to go into the body like that. Okay? And then double knot these on the inside. Okay. One and 2. That's going to make him look like he's got a little squinty eye kind of thing going on there. Usually I like to do that after the nose so I know exactly what he looks like, but while we're talking about the eyes, I figure I might as well do it now. Okay, so we got our little squinty eyes on there. Next up is sewing on our nose, and that's pretty straightforward. The only thing that you need to know about it, is that the top goes just under these color changes, and then the bottom goes just under these color changes, so that it goes on the right spot. And that's going to be pretty easy. We're just a basic sewing on method here. So we're going to thread our middle, and you can probably stuff the nose if you'd like. I'm going to go straight through the very center of that stitch. You probably get away with doing with stuffing it if you want, but I'm going to do it without stuffing because I don't think the stuffing is going to be really that important for it, and it might even give a little bit of give while I'm so that you can like squish the nose a little bit. Might be kind of fun. And for this, I'm just going to be simply sewing it around the outside there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll be back in just a second. Okay, so we got our nose on, and look at it. This guy's got a lot of character to him already. He's good, looking pretty cool. So next up is our arms, and our arms are going to be sewn on to, oh well, the side, wouldn't you know it. And the way that you sew on the arms, it all depends on you. I like to make them like perfectly on the side, like right next to the head, like so. You can make them this way, you can make them this way, so he looks like he's evil a little bit, like mwahahaha. Or you could put a pipe cleaner in it, and you could turn them any way you want. I'm not going to do the pipe cleaner way. I'm just going to make it pretty simple. So to do that, I'm just going to thread this middle piece of yarn on, and again, I'm going to fold it in half and just find right in the center. Looks like it's going to be right there for our arm. There we go. Pull it through, and I'm just going to stitch around it and sew that arm on, and then you'll do the same on the other side. It's pretty easy. You can add a little bit of stuffing for these arms. In fact, I probably suggest that you do add a little bit of stuffing, but you don't need too much, just a little bit. And you kind of want to make sure that they're facing down like that if you're not using a pipe cleaner. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. It can be kind of hard to get this fuzzy yarn sewn on straight, and I kind of need it to be very close to me because there's parts where it gets snagged on. And yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and get this sewn on correctly, and then I'll be back in just a second. Okay, now that we have the majority of the body sewn together, let's finish crocheting it, and then we can stuff it, and then finally sew on our feet. Okay, so for our second to last round, we're going to do a single crochet into the first stitch, and then we're going to do a decrease into the next stitch, and you can either do an invisible decrease or a sharp decrease. I'm going to start with the invisible decreases right now, and then after this round I'm going to do a sharp decrease, and I'll show you what a sharp decrease is if you've never heard of that. I don't know if there's actually a real name for it. It might be called the slip stitch two together, but I call it a sharp decrease. So I don't even know if I explained what I'm doing right now. I'm doing a single crochet in the first and then an invisible decrease in the next. And then you're supposed to repeat that 6 times total. I'm sorry. It's getting really late. It's 1 a.m. right now. So I don't know why I decided to do this late. So you're doing a single crochet and then an invisible decrease in each stitch. That's going to bring you down from 24 stitches from 18 stitches to 12 stitches around. Okay, and now we can let's just stuff it a pretty decent amount, not all the way, but we want to get some firmness in there. And right now it's going to be a little easier to stuff it than after the next round where we're going to need a pencil. So we'll stuff it pretty full. And you just want like a firmness to it. You don't need it to be overstuffed. Try not to get any stuffing showing through any of the stitches. Yeah, so that should be enough for right now, and then we'll actually add probably all the rest of this after the next round. So for our next round, we're going to be doing a sharp decrease into each stitch all the way around. This is going to be our last round for this piece. So a sharp decrease is you go into the next stitch, both loops, and pull a loop through, and then go into the next stitch and pull another loop through. So we have 3 loops on the hook. Pull that second loop through the 2 on the hook. Boo-boo. Okay, and that's going to really pull it in to finish it up. So let's do another one. You want one of those in each stitch. That's going to be 6 stitches total. So pull one through, go into the next stitch, and pull another through. Pull that second through the 2. There's 2, 3, 4, 'Ooh, that one's hard to do. There we go, 5. And our last one is going to be right here. That's 6. Okay, now we can cut the yarn. We don't need too much of a long end, just enough to just pull it through. And we're going to sew it together in just a second, but first, let's grab our rest of our stuffing here. And just the back of a pencil, I'm just going to stuff it into the hole. You want it to be pretty firm. And we'll go ahead and sew it all together and get our feet sewn on. I'll show you how to do that. And yeah, you can hear my cat meowing in the other room because it's 1 a.m. and he doesn't like to sleep out there. He likes to sleep in bed with me. He's a new cat. Still getting acquainted. Usually try not to stay up to this late, especially talking. But you gotta do what you gotta do with crochet. Alright. Okay. So I might have overstuffed him a little bit, but I kind of like it. He looks a little fat, and I kind of like that about him. Okay, so he's very dense. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take the end here and just sew it together. And sewing it together is pretty easy. If you don't know how to sew it together, there's a video. I'll throw it in the description of this video. Or you can go to clubcrochet.com and you should be able to find a video I have for how to sew it together. You're basically making an asterisk by going into the next stitches and across. And it will sew it together in a pretty seamless way, especially after doing these sharp decreases. Okay, and what you want to do at this end here is you actually want to go all the way to the top and poke straight through the top like that, and it's going to add 1 extra of these hairs because you want 1 more hair at least. And we can cut it like let's cut it like right there. Okay. Alright, and finally, to finish up this little character, we're going to sew on the feet. So a quick thing to do, you don't have to do this, but it's kind of a nice, it kind of helps it a little bit, helps them stand up, is you can take some nickels, you can actually stuff them into the foot to help it get a little bit of weight on the bottom, which will help him stand up in the end. And I think 2 nickels is probably enough. I should probably do it. And for the feet, to sew it, yeah, that looks pretty good. To actually sew it on, is you're going to take this orange end, thread it on the needle, and we're just going to go through, let's say like right there. That's probably a good spot. We want the very center of the foot to go right in the very center of the piece. So you want to line it up so that it's like that. We're just going to go ahead and put this where we feel is the middle, and it's going to come out through the back. We're going to use that to double knot it together in a sec. And we're just going to take this other end, okay, and we're just going to sew it together like we have sewn all of our pieces together. This one is a little trickier though, because you want to really hold it into the shape you want it to be as you're going around. So you want to hold it down with one hand and sew it together with the other, and that can be pretty tricky to do, especially with this weird fuzzy yarn. And like the hands, I'm going to have to do this a little closer to my chest so that I can get it going. So I'm going to go ahead and sew this together, and actually that's the last part, is you're just going to sew it together, double knot it with this, and then he should be able to stand up on his own. He kind of looks cute with one foot too. But I'm going to go ahead and sew this together and say my goodbyes. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. I post videos like this for free. I try to do one at least, free one a month, and then yeah. And if you are not a Club Crochet member yet, please consider becoming a Club Crochet member. Members get new patterns just like this every single month, as well as kits mailed directly to the door, unique exclusive tutorials, and then early access to the free patterns. There's a bunch of free stuff that Club Crochet members get. I can hear my cat really screaming for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. Pasta la pizza, and happy hooking. Bye.